This week's episode of Kaiju Weekly is brought to thee by the Holy Hand Grenade. When thou must blow thine enemies to tiny bits, in God's mercy, especially when they're giant killer rabbits. Accept no substitutes. Simply pull the holy pin, count to 3, and lob it at thy foes. 1, 2, 5. I mean 3. Ah, crap.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kaiju Weekly, the weekly podcast that introduces you to the wide world of giant monster movies. I am your host, Travis, and with me is a very special guest all the way from Okasawara Island, Nathan.
Yeah. What's up, kaiju lovers?
Foreshadowing to our topic for this week.
Spoilers!
Oh, man. So
thanks for having me on again, man. It was wonderful being able to take a quick little trip off of Monster Island, although I will tell you, with this whole coronavirus pandemic thing, I can't begin to tell you the paperwork I had to go through in order to take this trip. The board made me sign so many liability forms to come here. And then not only that, I had to agree. Jimmy had to do the same thing. And unfortunately, Michael's not here with us today, and he had to put up with this. You know those famous orange and yellow jumpsuits that people from Monster Island are known for wearing?
Yeah.
And they also had the little helmet things that went along with it. We were required, once we left on the Moonlight SY3, because that was what we used to get here today. It's Jimmy's baby. We had to wear those the entire trip to make sure we didn't catch the virus. And then when I got here, Michael had to put one on to fly back to the island. Apparently, him and Jimmy are testing out some sort of new jungle adventure attraction that the board of directors on the island is trying out.
Yeah, I'm
not sure what's going on with that, but
yeah, I'm kind of glad they buried the hatchet because I know they went through a rough patch there for a little while.
Yeah, they had a flame war going on there for a while. I don't know what it is with Jimmy. He's starting flame wars with people. At one point, he was fighting two of them. Michael and John LeMay. But the one with John LeMay is still the weirdest one. It is the weirdest flame war I've ever seen because Jimmy is only on Twitter and John is not on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
I don't it's
was more of a Cold War then.
Yeah. Well, I got a Cold War going on with somebody else.
Well, I am so glad.
It is a Cold War.
I am so glad that you are on this episode. It's going to be a fun one. Listeners,
I will let you know. As you can see, I am representing Monster Island and your show because I am sporting the Visit Monster Island shirt that you put together for your merch site.
Yeah, I'm glad that you got one of those shirts because that was made after the last episode that you were on. I was inspired to go and make that shirt.
Yeah, and I bought it immediately, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm glad you bought it because it was kind of a way of paying me back for all the trouble that your mascots caused the last time you were on.
Oh, jeez. You will be happy to know that this is actually the first place I'm even going to hint at this. The big reveal will be soon. I won't say exactly when, but it'll be soon. I am bringing in a third mascot to curtail their gremlin-like antics.
I'm glad. I am very glad because that really, really was a pain in the butt to try to edit that podcast episode.
I know. I'm sure you probably gained at least, 5 gray hairs and lost at least a year off of your life. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
at least. Well, listeners, we're just going to tell you right up front, this episode is going to be a fun one because we watched the movie that we're talking about together right before recording, and it's one of those movies that you don't come away the same person as you were when you went in.
This goes back to your left of center, I think is what you were doing.
Yeah. We took a little break from our left of center kaiju movies, and now we're back. We're back to watching movies that are talking about movies that are a little left of center. But before we get into that, let's talk about the news. So
What you got?
We don't have a whole lot of news in the world of giant monsters, but just got a few things. One thing that's kind of tangentially related to giant monster movie news is San Diego Comic-Con is officially canceled for this year.
Oh man.
Yeah, so they finally pulled the trigger on it, and much like a character with his horse in the movie we watched for this week, they put that horse down.
Oh man. This is a great way to start your movie.
I know.
Horse assassination. Yeah.
I know. So
I have to tell you, the big reason why people are talking about this, the fan community, is that means we aren't going to have any big reveals or big trailer drops like we've had before. Like last year at SDCC, we got, 2 years ago, I should say, we had the big trailer drop, the first trailer drop for King of the Monsters, and everyone lost their minds, understandably so. And, before that, they showed that weird kind of, I don't know what you would call it, not sizzle reel, maybe like proof of concept sort of a thing, like in 2012 for Godzilla 2018. Well, now it's canceled. We're not seeing it. What concerns me is that San Diego Comic-Con is the geek convention.
Right.
It is. I don't think it was necessarily the first. If Jimmy was on right now, he would correct me or blog about it later. But it is the one that everybody knows. It's the largest, it's the most famous, and they have canceled. This is the first time in their entire history that they have ever done this. And it's because of the pandemic going on. And for me, that's concerning because that makes you wonder if any other conventions that are happening in the summer, a couple of my favorites, G-Fest and Gen Con, they happen around the same time. And now I'm wondering if they're even going to happen, if other conventions are going to look at SDCC canceling and then cancel their own events.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that JD specifically for G-Fest was saying online anytime anybody kind of criticized him for not canceling it. It's like, look, it's in the summertime, and even San Diego Comic-Con hasn't canceled yet. Well, now San Diego Comic-Con has canceled, so it does make me wonder what's going to happen with G-Fest, if he is going to go ahead and cancel it or not. But we'll see. We've been keeping up with the news here on this podcast about G-Fest and everything. But yeah, you're right that canceling, the reason why this relates to giant monster movies is because at San Diego Comic-Con, we were kind of expecting to get some info or maybe a trailer, something from Godzilla vs. Kong, and now we're not getting that.
I can tell you, because I have some insider information, so to speak, because I think I can at least say this much. I am scheduled to be one of the panel presenters at G-Fest this year. So I've been hearing from the organizers about what they're trying to figure out. And I know that Matt Frank has actually talked about doing some sort of online alternative to G-Fest.
Yeah.
I don't know what that would look like, but I've also heard from some other people that they have done online conventions before, and I thought they were fun. I'm like, okay. I can tell you for sure, if G-Fest does get canceled and there isn't some sort of online alternative, I am planning on turning at least one of my panel presentations, which would have been with DiManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project. I contacted him. He's like, if it gets canceled, let's just record an episode or a video or something for the podcast.
Right.
Of our presentation. And he was all for it.
That'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun. I'd love to hear that. So yeah, there's not much more to talk about other than it being canceled. We don't know what's going to happen if Legendary and Warner Brothers were planning on doing anything for Godzilla vs. Kong for San Diego Comic-Con. Are they going to just release it online? What's going to happen? We don't really know, but that was just the news, and it affects the world of giant monsters, so I wanted to talk about it.
Here's a wacky idea, Warner Brothers. I'm assuming you're listening to this, because why wouldn't you?
Of course. Yeah, definitely. We only have like 50 listeners on a regular basis. Why wouldn't one of them be one of the largest movie producers in the world?
Of course. Here's a crazy idea. Insane scenario. SDCC canceled. G-Fest still goes on. How about you drop the trailer at G-Fest?
Yeah.
Just saying. All right.
Yeah. That would be fun. All right. So moving on to the next bit of news, we've had these legendary watch-alongs for the last few weeks.
Unfortunately, I have not been able to participate in those because I've been very busy.
Yeah, I haven't participated either. But the first one we had was a watch-along with Gareth Edwards, watching along the 2014 Godzilla movie.
Which I will tell you, I was very happy to see all the love he was getting, because I still feel like there are people in the fan community who don't appreciate him or his film nearly enough.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that film gets a lot more hate than it deserves. I mean, I don't think it gets an unusual amount of hate. Like there is enough people who do love it out there, but the hate that it does get, I feel, is unjustified.
Here's a hot take for you, because you say that, but I feel like the only MonsterVerse movie I don't really see people criticizing all that much is Skull Island. And I don't understand why, because I don't know if you heard my episode on Skull Island or not, but I do bring up it's not perfect, and I have some issues.
Oh no, yeah.
And actually, I'm going to bring this up here because I didn't get a chance. We went through so many things on that episode, so I didn't get to everything. Although Jimmy had this in his Jimmy's Notes blog as a follow-up to it. The whole thing that I hear people praising Skull Island for is that it has daylight battles. I'm like, okay, I get it, but I then saw somebody on Twitter who works in special effects, and he says, I'm tired of hearing people say this, because they don't just do stuff like in King of the Monsters or in 2014 or any other movie, Pacific Rim, the original Pacific Rim. They don't just do those things at night because they're trying to hide imperfections or have rain or whatever, and they're not doing it to hide imperfections in the special effects. Yes, sometimes they do that. But he said, here's the real reason for it. Yeah, it's a little harder to render things in daylight in a computer. That is true. However, when you look at the monsters or the things that are happening in those movies that are set at night, they're at night because those are usually things that have bright lights or flashy powers. They look better at night.
Right.
Godzilla's atomic ray, it shows up better at night than it would in the daytime.
Right. Yeah.
And then what do you have
contrast?
And then what do you have in Kong Skull Island? You have monsters that have drabber colors, they're earthier, they look better in the daylight.
Yeah.
Thank you. There are creative choices being made here not to hide things.
Yeah, I do think that the 2014 one is a well-made movie, and we'll get around to reviewing it on this podcast at some point coming up, probably this year. I'm hoping we'll get to it this year. So I'll talk about it more then. But so the most recent legendary watch along that we had was with why am I blanking on his name?
Michael Dougherty.
Yeah, Michael Dougherty. That's right. I was like, why am I blanking on his name?
Yeah, because it was Gareth Edwards for 14, and then Jordan Vogt Roberts for Skull Island, and then the most recent one was Michael Dougherty for King of the Monsters. There you go.
Yeah, and so in it, the one thing that I want to, and it happened actually before the watch along, but it's a little thing that kind of went along with it. The one bit of news that I found interesting was that they officially said that the name of the Muto that was in King of the Monsters is named the Queen Muto, and that the on-set nickname for it is Barb.
Yep.
And I just thought that was
I just want to say I eagerly await Michael Dougherty's other meme-tastic nicknames for all the monsters in that movie, because we have Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have Barb. And predictably, within, I think, 30 minutes of that announcement, someone made a Muto Queen Barb Twitter feed.
Oh man, yeah, it the internet moves fast. So I thought this was interesting. So in the comic book that was the prelude to King of the Monsters, we had Muto Prime.
Mm-hmm.
And Muto Prime was the progenitor of the two Mutos that we saw in the 2014 movie. So, and the way Michael Dougherty talked about this Queen Muto is that she's actually older than those two Mutos, and something and I forget who said it or how it was described, but that the queen has the potential to be Muto Prime if she mates and gives birth to more Mutos. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's
that explains why one of the first posts on that Twitter feed was looking for a mate.
Right. Yeah. So, it's just a little bit of extra bonus stuff that adds to the world. Somebody brought up just recently, I think it might have been Chris from GargantuaCast brought up recently when we were talking that he would love to see a bestiary, like an actual in-universe type book that's written that describes all of the biology and all the history and everything of these monsters and of these titans. And so I completely agree with that. And this is kind of the type of stuff that you would see in a bestiary like that.
Oh yeah. If you want to have a fun discussion with, say, Michael when he gets back, or we could have it right now for him if you wanted to, or you could ask the listeners on social media. What do you think are the other nicknames for the other Titans?
Oh yeah,
in King of the Monsters, like Behemoth and I'm trying to remember some of the other ones. Scylla, and although I called Scylla, I think Scylla's tentacles, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah,
I called that one Cthulhu face, but
yeah, Cthulhu face. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I have to give it some thought and then come up with some funny nicknames for them and see.
Behemoth probably has the obvious nickname of Harry, Harry.
Right. Yeah. Or Snuffleupagus, because he does kind of look like a
Snuffy.
Yeah, Snuffy. He does kind of look like that. So that's a bit of fun little info that we had there. So that was that. Like we said, this is a slow news week, so we're just kind of looking for the scraps of news that we can get.
Just wait until the trailer for Godzilla vs. Kong drops, and you'll have plenty to talk about, because we'll finally know that this movie is not some fever dream that the entire fandom is.
Oh man, when that trailer drops, we may dedicate an entire episode to just reviewing the trailer. Because,
as you should.
Yeah, because I can't imagine reducing that down to just like a 20-minute news segment. That would be just no.
Yeah, I'm already planning on trying my hand reaction video for the podcast Monster Island Film Vault YouTube channel.
Mm. That would be fun. So the last bit of news I wanted to talk about, we had a new Magic the Gathering product that came out. We talked about a couple of weeks ago how Magic the Gathering had crossed over with the Toho monsters, and we got a lot of Godzilla and his friends on playing cards for this tabletop game. We have a new set that's coming out, and it's going to include 5 Japanese foil land cards and 1 MTG Arena sleeve code. I have no idea what those mean, but that was in the news. Because I don't
Well,
play Magic the Gathering.
MTG is Magic the Gathering.
Oh, yeah, MTG. That makes sense. See, this is what watching the movie that we watched today does to my brain.
It
Listeners.
can just be your excuse for everything now.
Right, exactly. Pre-orders will only be available for a 24-hour period starting on May 7th at 9 a.m. Pacific time via the Secret Layer site, and it's going for $29.99.
So I'm looking at this, and I've played Magic the Gathering, but it was always my younger brother Josiah's thing. That was his hobby. So I would he would collect the cards, and I would just play with him. So I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking one of 3 things needs to happen. Either I need to buy this for him as a gift, but it's really for me because I'm a jerk like that. Or I just need to break down and buy it myself just for the heck of it. And then I'll play my brother or anybody else I know who plays the game, because I know a few other people who play the game. Not Jimmy, though. He's not into it. Or I need to talk my brother into buying this for my birthday.
So if I'm remembering right, or if I may have it wrong, but in Magic the Gathering you have like actual monster cards, and then you also have locations, right?
Yes. The basic gist of what the way Magic works is that the idea is that you as the player are a wizard, and you are summoning creatures from your deck to engage in combat with another wizard.
Okay.
And the way it works is that you have they're called land cards, and then you lay those out and you use the land cards. You could use other cards to do this too, but the land cards are your primary source of what's called mana, which is essentially like the money that you get each turn to play different cards from your hand into play. And then the primary way that you inflict damage on the other player is you put out creature cards, attacking costs and things like that. And you can make the cards, like you can say, I'm attacking with this creature, and then you rotate the card, and that means that the creature is attacking. You tap it. That's the term used in. And then the other player has the option to then tap one of his creatures to defend it, because otherwise that damage goes straight to him.
Yeah. See,
that's the basic gist of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm glad that you're here, because if you listen to the last episode where me and Michael talked about the Magic the Gathering set, we had no idea what we were talking about.
Yeah. Although I will say one thing that concerns me a little bit, and I don't know if this is true, if it was a bunch of fan-made things that went up, but it seems like, because this is part of this new kind of giant monster theme set that Wizards of the Coast, which produces Magic the Gathering, they're putting together. So it's part of this big set. I forget what it's like, the Behemoths of Ikoria?
Yeah,
I think is what it's called. Yeah. And there are some people who have said that these Godzilla cards, all they're really doing is reskinning other cards.
Yeah, well, now that I have heard that a lot of these are it's the same kind of it's same as other Magic the Gathering cards. They just changed the name and added a new picture, that has Godzilla or whatever monster on it. So I think they might have done that just from my point of view to not break the game. It's like it's easy to integrate it in.
I was thinking about that. I have played Magic cards where, no joke, I was playing with a friend who had a bunch of his own decks that he had put together, and he was telling themes where, and there was one that was all dinosaurs. Yes, there are dinosaurs in Magic the Gathering. And I said, that sounds like fun. And that's why I played the dinosaur deck. So, and I'm looking at that, I was like, these are already gigantic. We have full-fledged kaiju now.
Yeah, exactly.
If we were playing this realistically, it would be, okay, even if you had a troop of dinosaurs, it's still going to be Godzilla steps on them and wins. I mean,
right. Yeah.
So you got to suspend disbelief a tiny bit.
Yeah. So these cards are the location cards that are going along with those monster cards that we got not too long ago. And again, the same thing we talked about with those other cards. The artwork is fantastic.
It is
just beautiful artwork. All of them have Godzilla in some kind of backdrop and scenery, and it looks fantastic. You've got one that looks like a green field with Godzilla walking with Mothra. Then you have a sunset with Godzilla and Hedorah in the background. You've got Godzilla in a jungle, Godzilla on some kind of shoreline, and then a Godzilla up in a high altitude mountain fighting some kind of flying creature that might be Rodan, but the picture is too small for me to see.
You know what's funny? You're describing all these things, as I haven't looked at all of these as much as you have. I know that I knew this existed. Those are land cards. Since I know things about Magic, for there's a hope listeners. Those are land cards. Like I said, that gives you different kinds of mana. It gives you mana. But the thing is that they're all different colors, and they give you different colors of mana. And different cards require different kinds of mana, different colors of mana in order to play them. So a lot of times people will theme their decks around certain colors. So it might be red and green, or black and white, and things like that. So what you're describing are I already know. It's like, I know what kinds of lands he's talking about there. The one that's a jungle, that's a green land. The shoreline, that's probably a plains for a white land. And what were some of the other ones you were describing? Like the mountain one is probably that's a red land, because mountains are red lands in Magic. And then what was the
one it was a sunset with Hedorah in like a swamp area?
Probably black.
Yeah, that one's the
swamps are usually black, and then there should
the shoreline is blue.
Okay, so that one's probably blue. And then is there one that looks white?
Yeah, that's the plains one. So the plains one is white, because I can see
Mothra, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I can see the colors on them. The plains with Mothra, that one's white. You have the swamp with Godzilla and Hedorah in the background. That one's black. The jungle is green. The shoreline is blue, and then the mountain is red.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. So so if anybody is interested in getting these, you can pre-order them at the website that's secretlayer.wizards.com, and they're going to be available for a 24-hour period on May 7th for pre-order.
Well, the pre-orders, yeah.
Yeah, that's the pre-order. And so if anybody wants to pre-order them, and they're starting at $30.
The big thing is that you'll get the Japan exclusive ones.
Right. Yeah.
I'm guessing this will probably be the only way you can get the Japan exclusive if you're not in Japan.
Right. But yeah, other than that, there wasn't really any news this week. That was the last of the news I had. So we can go ahead and jump into our main topic. And oh boy, is it going to be something.
We've already hinted at this last time I visited. I just happened to mention, hey, I'm mildly interested in seeing this movie because DeForest Kelley is in it. And I'm a Star Trek.
Exactly. So the trivia question, I always ask a trivia question at the end of each episode to hint to the next episode. So the trivia question from last week is, what fluffy monster movie features one of the stars of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho and two actors from Star Trek the original series? And we've got a few answers. So Cole Francis said Harry Potter. I did say that you answer any kind of answer that you want, and I will give you a shout out. And then let's see. Mark Myers said The Birds.
Almost.
Almost.
That's more feathery than fluffy.
Right.
This one might be my favorite.
Tyler's Mosher said Godzilla versus Donkey Kong.
I want this movie.
Yeah.
I want this movie.
That sounds fun. Luis Valenzuela said Gorath, 1962 film from Tokyo.
No, film from Toho.
Or Toho, not Tokyo. Well,
it was like I didn't remember Gorath being fluffy.
Yeah, he's kind of, well, because he's like a seal or a sea lion. So
that's Moguma. I'm thinking of, when I think of Gorath, the
okay.
rogue planet thing. It's like, it's big.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. No, that's not fluffy at all.
This is what happens when you feed your tribble too much. Okay, I get it.
So we've got a few answers from Michael that he gave.
Oh, you forgot about Kershaw.
Hold on, I want to get to Kershaw last. Okay. So we've got a few answers from Michael, who gave me his answers before he took off to Monster Island.
Yes.
And so he said the creature from Frankenstein's Plant versus Monster X Ibra. Okay. And
he's
then
trying to compete with my funny answer.
Right, yeah. Then he said Shin Godzilla versus Yeti of the 20th century.
I was gonna say, it's just that I see the rest of it.
Giant of the 21st century, or actually it's 20th century, not 21st.
Oh, okay.
And then Godzilla versus the Smog Monster 2: Attack of the Rona. Oh, geez. We had to get a
kids
Corona.
are calling it now.
Right. Yeah, we had to get a Corona reference in there. And then he did...
Dora is... That's why he got Hedera ever since the quarantine happened. He's been quarantined from everybody else on the island. I mean, the other kaiju are like, nope.
Right. And then my favorite one, The Trouble with Tribbles 3, Great Caesar's Hairball.
Okay, that one might be my favorite now.
Yeah, I really like that one. And then
I want to know what Trouble with Tribbles 2 is. Is it the 2 episodes of the original series and then the Deep Space Nine one? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think
the third in the line.
yeah, I think the Deep Space Nine one might be the second one that he's referencing.
Oh, that's one of my all-time favorite episodes of Star Trek, period.
And then we have my best friend in the whole wide world, Kershaw Baker, who messaged me the other day on Instagram and said, I can't believe you're going to be doing this movie. I can't believe you're finally covering this movie. And said his guess, Night of the Lepus.
Oh, baby.
And yep, so this episode is dedicated to you, Kershaw. I don't get to talk to him too much ever since with the virus and the quarantine, and he lives in another state, so I don't get to talk to him as much, but this episode is dedicated to you.
So my question now becomes, is he by that or not?
Is he what?
Is he going to be honored by that or not?
Oh, I'm sure. So yes, our main topic for this week is Night of the Lepus, a movie about giant rabbits. In fact, that's the plot breakdown that I have. Giant mutant rabbits terrorize the Southwest United States.
I was gonna say, you left out the kill. If it was just giant rabbits, then it would just be Clifford the Big Red Dog or something.
Right.
These are rabbits.
So, cast and crew, I'm just going to go through this real quick. We have Stuart Whitman, Janet Leigh, who is the actress from Psycho. She was the one in the famous shower scene. That was from Psycho. So, and she's also Jamie Lee Curtis's mother. So, the horror movies run in their family.
Yep, from one scream queen to another.
Exactly. Rory Calhoun is also in this movie. DeForest Kelly is in this movie. There's one of your actors. There's one of your actors from Star Trek. Paul Fix is the other actor from
Yes.
and who plays Sheriff Cody in this.
And I looked up way too much stuff about Paul Fix to drop in this episode. We'll get to that in a second.
Oh, that works. All right. Melanie Fullerton is, I think, the little girl in this movie. Yeah, that's the little girl.
It's all her fault.
Yeah, it's all her fault. This movie was directed by William F. Claxton and produced by A.C. Lyles,
who were before this were known for making westerns.
Right.
And you can tell.
You can definitely tell, which makes sense why DeForest Kelley is in it, because before DeForest Kelley was even in Star Trek, he was a Western actor.
Mm-hmm. He was known for playing the heavy in westerns. I need to find some of the westerns in and watch them, because I will confess I have not seen I don't think I've seen DeForest Kelley in anything other than Star Trek, and I feel a little bit bad about that.
Well, now you have.
Oh yes, now I have. Thanks to you and the show. I have not Star Trek, but I need him in more things than Star Trek. Fun fact, this was the last not Star Trek movie that he was ever in.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So look where his career took him. Oh, poor guy. So let's talk opening thoughts. What are your initial thoughts on this movie, having finally watched it?
The first thing that needs to be said is you and I kind of cheated. We watched the riff tracks version of this movie, which I think actually enhanced the, because, and I had never seen this before. I had not seen this before. And I got to tell you, I think if I had watched it without riff tracks, I would have found it not only not scary, but kind of boring at points, because there are long periods in this movie where nothing happened.
Oh yeah, for sure. Sure.
The jokes definitely helped it. And the thing is I probably would have been riffing it myself. Heck, when we were watching today, I was adding my own jokes to the riff track. Because that is what years of watching MST3K and riff tracks has done to me.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh man, I think my favorite one. I love the. What was the one that was your favorite?
Oh, so,
hippity hoppity down.
Death is on its way.
Death is on its way.
It's said by Mike Nelson, who's my man.
Oh man, I love it.
I'm going to throw that out there right now. Fellow Misties, yes, Mike is my favorite host. Come at me, bruh.
He's my favorite host too. I mean, Joel gets a lot of respect for starting the whole thing, and really, I mean, it was his brainchild. I mean, to be fair.
I will tell you right now, I do like Joel, and I do like Joan. There is not an MS3K host I don't like, but Mike edges out just a little bit for me. And yeah, I will tell you, I've met Joel Hodgson, wonderful, wonderful man. So just want to throw that out there.
Okay, well, yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, but Mike is my favorite. I think it also has a lot to do with the time period when I was watching Mystery Science Theater 3000 was the Mike era. And then when I watched reruns, that's when I watched all the Joel ones. But I watched Mike first, and so it's kind of like with Doctor Who. Who's your favorite doctor?
You always remember your first.
Right? Yeah, it's always your first. You always remember that first one. So
that's why I am one of the few people who loves Christopher Eccleston. I feel like.
Oh yeah, I love Chris. I love Chris. I can't even talk. These giant rabbits have just fried my brain.
Well, and we do have, as I mentioned in this episode, we have one of them on the island. Just one, because we're afraid to have more than one, because there might be more.
So,
we have to keep it PG around here. So,
So getting into our likes and dislikes about this movie, what is it about this movie? What, if anything, about this movie do you like?
I can't love this movie with anything but irony.
I know, yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. That is the thing. I can't love. I have nothing but ironic love for this movie. Again, thank you, MSK, for doing this to me. I like DeForest Kelley. I will say that. I'll bring this up. I like DeForest Kelley, but he's from Star Trek, so I'm kind of predisposed to like him or any other Star Trek actor who's in something. And so it was cool. He needs to lose the horrible 70s mustache, though. So does everybody in this movie, except that one guy, Jason, who was one of the sheriff's deputies or something like that. He was fine. He was totally fine. Everybody else needed to lose the mustache.
So everybody in this movie just had a lot of extra hair.
Oh yeah. Hair. But so that was cool, and seeing the Pulp Fix when I had actually kind of forgotten that he was in Star Trek. I was surprised. It was something brought up to me because I knew about DeForest Kelley. So yeah, there's two actors. Who's the other guy? And you said Pulp Fix. I'm like, wait a second.
Mm-hmm.
So just to go into that from my notes, the Pulp Fix was actually, he wasn't the original Doctor if you go by the unaired pilot. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna veer off course here a little bit with Kaiju. Sorry, deal with it. So the original Star Trek series actually had 2 pilot episodes.
Right.
The first one was called The Cage. And the only character from that episode who carried over to the rest of the show was Spock.
Right. Well, I mean, Pike did kind of come back.
Kinda. That was weird. I'll get to that in a second. But so they made the Cage, called The Cage. And that had a completely different Doctor. His name was Dr. Phil Boyce, who was played by John Hoyt. So he was the Doctor in that first episode. It never aired. So they made a second pilot that was called Where No Man Has Gone Before. That is where Pulp Fix was on the show as Dr. Piper.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in that episode. That was when NBC actually picked up the show because they liked it enough. But after they made that episode, both Gene Roddenberry and the screenwriter for that episode, a few other people looked at Pulp Fix and they're like, yeah, we don't quite like his performance or how he played the character and all that. So let's make up a new character because Gene Roddenberry wanted a younger, more, I guess you could say, vigorous character to play the Doctor. So then he invented Dr. McCoy, and then it was replaced by DeForest Kelley, and the rest is history. That was it's not the first episode to air. The first episode to air was The Man Trap, but the first episode they made, so it's technically the debut of DeForest Kelley as Dr. McCoy. It's called the Corbomite Maneuver, which is a fantastic episode, I might add.
Yeah.
So, so there's your little Star Trek lesson, kids.
Yep.
This is why I came back.
Yep, exactly.
So you're getting more DeForest Kelley in this. He's not playing Dr. McCoy, but he still has that little bit of that kind of cantankerous energy to him in this. He was playing, I think he was a university professor. He just happened to be hanging out in Arizona.
Yeah. I forget what his character actually was supposed to be. He just was there.
I think IMDb said he was supposed to be doctor or professor something, but
yeah.
We're watching Night of the Lepus and we have riff tracks, so it's a little hard to keep track of everything.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now, my initial thoughts on this movie is I'm just like you. I love it with all of the irony in the world. It is so fun to watch, but it was not meant to be fun. I have been wanting to cover this movie ever since I first did Kaiju Weekly, even back before I had Steven and before I had Michael. Back when I had my original co-host, Jake, and all of those episodes are lost now. You can't listen to them. But back then, I found out about this movie when researching giant monster movies, and I was like, I have to see this movie. I have to talk about this movie on a podcast. And so I am so happy we finally get here and get to talk about this movie.
Yeah, except you came perilously close to covering it alone because Michael specifically requested a day pass to Monster Island to avoid this.
Right. Yeah. The two movies that Michael so far has said, I am not covering, I am not going to be on the episode with you, is Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and Night of the Lepus. And can anybody really blame him? Man.
So it's for me, the likes and dislikes are just kind of blurring because there are things that are bad. This is a bad movie. Let's just say that up front. This is a terrible movie, but it's the kind of movie that, as I said about Godzilla versus Megalon back on my first podcast, Kaiju Vision Radio, this is the kind of movie that I call a glorious train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what it is. You can't take your eyes off of a train wreck, and this one is so wonderfully bad.
Oh yeah. And I describe it in a way in my final thoughts that I'm going to save for when we get to final thoughts, but I have a very interesting way of describing this movie. But yeah, you're right. It's not a good movie. It is not a good movie, but is it fun to watch? I fully believe that if you are the type of person that enjoys cheesy and ridiculous movies, if you like The Room, if you like Plan 9 from Outer Space, you are going to love Night of the Lepus because it is.
I am going to put this out here. I do think Night of the Lepus is better than both of them. I will throw that. Now it's not a very high bar clear,
right? Yeah,
but it's still better than both of them.
Well, there's better acting in Night of the Lepus than there is, because there's actual seasoned and like good actors in this movie.
You're tearing me apart, Rabbit.
Oh man! So before we move into anything else, we need to let all of the listeners know we're going to be playing a pop culture rabbit bingo.
Get your bingo boards out with all that we reference.
We're going to see how many we can reference I
have a list. I have a list of potentials. I can't promise we'll get to all of them, but how many do I have? I have more than any bingo board should have. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Although it's more like 21, and 1 is an inside joke. If you hung out with us at Kaiju Quarantine.
Oh, yes. Oh, for anyone.
Speaking of Star Trek and Tribbles, when it was brought up in our little the Twitter chat, all the podcasts are involved with us, our planning chat. I put up a meme of war from Trials and Tribble-ations that said, it is a long story. We do not speak of it with outsiders.
Anybody who's listening to this who was also part of the Kaiju Quarantine and especially was there in that last episode, or not last episode, but last little bit of it for Final Wars, tweet at us and let us know, and let's all get through it together. We have formed a support group for victims of this image that was shared with us, and hopefully we can help you sleep better at night.
That's how you make a rabbit scary. Unlike
that picture is scarier than this entire movie. That is exactly right.
That sounds like as good a place as about this. Okay, so the draw for this is the rabbits. Except when this movie was coming out, it was released by MGM, 1972.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want anybody to know that it was a horror movie about rabbits.
Right.
The funny thing is, the title of this movie was originally Rabbits, but then some very smart person at MGM realized no one will take a horror movie about rabbits seriously. So they changed it to Night of the Lepus. Lepus is the Latin genus, well, it's a Latin word for hare, which is technically inaccurate because hares not the same as rabbits. They're in the same family, but they are two separate species. Hares have bigger ears, for one thing. So it's still technically wrong, but they did that probably because they probably did that because it sounded kind of exotic, kind of interesting, but people who know their Latin are going to know exactly what it is. Also, when you look at the posters for it, there are no rabbits anywhere.
It's just
a bunch of eyes in the dark. And they're like, it has all these taglines talking about, ooh, the monsters in the dark. See, they're coming. And it's like they're hyping it so much.
Yeah.
And then you watch it, and then, people who don't know Latin probably go to this and they see it and they're like, rabbits. Rabbits. So I'm sure you know about this. Do you remember the unmade movie from Daiei that was called Nezera?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that is infamous about Nezera was that the failure of Nezera eventually Gamera. Good came out of it.
Right, yeah, in the
sort of
Gamera.
For 30 years anyway. So that was supposed to be a kaiju movie about giant rats.
Right.
And the way they were trying to make this movie is they had miniatures built and they were going to use real rats.
Mm-hmm.
And they were trying to film it with real rats, and it proved problematic.
Right. Because
I'll leave it at that, because this is not a Nezera episode, but it proved problematic. It failed, and then they eventually used a bunch of that stuff to make Gamera, to make Giant Monster Gamera.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
This movie proves that it was good that movie failed, because what we have here is a bunch of miniatures that have regular size rabbits running through them toward the camera.
But Nathan, that's no ordinary rabbit. Look at the bones. Okay, there's your first. Mark it off on the bingo card.
Yeah, there you go. That's your first one.
So listeners,
I can neither confirm nor deny that the one Lepus rabbit on the island may have tried to bite off Godzilla's head.
Run away!
There is an animation feature. I sent it to you before we started recording, where someone ran the audio from that scene over Godzilla and several other kaiju. I can neither confirm or deny that is a dramatization.
So listeners, I want to kind of break this down a little bit, because this podcast is not just meant for longtime kaiju fans, but it's also for people who are just getting into the genre. So if you're new to the giant monster genre, there are three types of giant monster movies. You have Suitmation, or tokusatsu, which is what Godzilla is, and a lot of those Japanese monsters, they're made with big rubber suits, and they knock down miniatures. So if you think of Power Rangers, Godzilla, any of those, that's what that is.
Ultraman. Mm-hmm.
Right, Ultraman. Then you have stop motion, or claymation, sometimes is what it's called, which is or Dynamation, is what it was nicknamed back in the day, which is what your Ray Harryhausen films are. So if you're thinking of Clash of the Titans, or It Came from Beneath the Sea, or anything like that, Mysterious
Beast
Island,
from 20,000 Fathoms.
Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, that's what that is.
Or if you really want to get super, Willis O'Brien and King Kong.
Yeah, Willis O'Brien and King Kong. That stop motion animation is made, and there's a whole process to making that, but that's another form of monster movie. Then you have the monster movies that take real animals and put them on miniature sets and just film them kind of running around on miniature sets. They did that with I think it was Journey to the Center of the Earth, or one of the movies. One of the Journey to the Center of the Earth movies did it, where they just took lizards and then put like little fins on them and just let them run loose
and pass them off as dinosaurs. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, totally a dinosaur.
Yeah, totally. Also the giant
or the giant Gila monster.
Giant Gila monster was one.
If you're a fan of MST3K.
Yep, giant Gila monster. And then that's what they did for Night of the Lepus. It's not suitmation. It's not stop motion. They didn't design.
Well,
they didn't design a scary looking rabbit monster, which is what they should have done, which is what they were going to do in Nezera, because they had the big rats that were destroying the city in Nezera that was planned, but they also were planning on using a tokusatsu giant rat kaiju too.
Like the I guess you could say it's the Rat King, who
right.
A totally different reference. Yeah,
right.
So they were going to do a suit for it, but then the movie fell apart because they talk about a trouble.
And so if they did something like that in this movie, it would have been so much better. But they didn't. They just had fluffy, cute little bunnies running around.
They weren't even wild rabbits.
They weren't even wild rabbits.
They were domesticated rabbits. By the way, because I spent rabbits. because I was way too bored on my flight here. And this is me we're talking about, because if you listen to my show, you know I do way more research than anyone should do on some of these movies. I was doing research on rabbits on my flight here, and I found that there is actually a difference between bunnies and rabbits.
Mm-hmm.
A rabbit is a small mammal. A bunny is a young, often baby rabbit. So there you go. Ever wanted to know the difference? There you go.
So this movie is just something else. I love it. I love it so much.
So we've already talked about that they used real rabbits on miniature sets, and they're just moving the camera around. And I'm just picturing crew members standing just behind the camera, holding up carrots and lettuce, trying to lure the rabbits.
Right.
Like, come here, guys. Come on. But then, this is a horror movie. This is about giant killer rabbit. So they have to maul people.
Right.
So how do you transition from miniature to the actors being attacked by the rabbits? Very awkwardly shot guys in bunny costume. And I mean, when I say awkward, I mean like you barely even see them. Like the editing in this is so weird because they have to do like super crazy close-ups so you could barely see the rabbit.
Right.
And it just the so-called attack scene. So if you're a slasher movie fan, you'll be a little disappointed. The attack scenes more or less amount to super close-ups of dude in bunny costume tackling actor and smearing them with ketchup. And this is I may think that's a joke. I read that is literally what they did. This is the only movie I can think of where they for real used ketchup as fake blood. I always made that joke since I was a kid. This is one movie where they actually.
Yep. And my favorite scene where it's so noticeable that it's a man in a bunny suit is when one of the horses is being attacked by one of the rabbits, and it's just a guy in a rabbit suit that's jumping on the horse.
The whole time I watched that, I'm like, please give me real bunnies attacking rubber horses. Super Riot did it in Frankenstein World. You do it. And they didn't do it. I said, cowards.
And seeing all I was thinking was the Easter Bunny is out for revenge.
Check.
Yep.
Check for the bingo. And I already referenced one earlier when I did the greeting. So there's 3 we've checked off. So.
Right, exactly. So, one of my favorite facts. Well, we talked about how this movie is slightly better than like The Room or Plan 9 from Outer Space because of the acting in it. There are two actors in this movie who are Oscar nominees. And not just not Oscar nominees, they were Oscar nominees at the time that this movie was being made.
Who was it and what were they in?
You have Janet Leigh. Of course, Janet Leigh from Psycho. She was nominated. I can't remember if she was nominated for Psycho or if she was nominated for something else. And then you have, oh, hold on, I lost it. You have Stuart Whitman, who was the one who played the main Roy Bennett, who played Janet Leigh's husband. And
gotcha.
So let's see.
All the characters blend together unless you're
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The two people who wanted to make Jack a little more like Jill and Jill a little more like Jack, as they described it in the movie.
I was watching that. I was like, what are you doing? That makes no sense. The movie is riffing itself.
Right. Exactly.
It was this scene where you have Janet Leigh and her daughter, because they have a daughter in this. It's like, what, 10 years old? This 10-year-old blonde girl. And she's hanging out with her husband, who's a scientist, studying the rabbits. Because the idea, I think, in this one, it's not very well explained, is that this guy started experimenting on rabbits, and then they somehow got bigger and became carnivorous. Okay. And apparently, you make something bigger, it automatically becomes carnivorous, to which I say cows. But
right.
and then she's asking about, because she's a 10-year-old girl, thinks the rabbits are cute and she wants one. She says, what are you doing to him? It's like, well, we're gonna make Jack a little bit more like Jill and Jill a little bit like Jack. Like, what in the heck are you talking about? Is this how you explain spaying and neutering to children? What nursery rhymes? Butchering nursery rhymes? I mean, what, you just stop it.
Oh man,
I was hung up on that for a minute after it was
right. It was so weird, such a weird line. My other fact that I really love about this movie is Janet Leigh at the time had declined to allow her two teenage daughters, Kelly Curtis and Jamie Lee Curtis, to appear in the movie in minor roles because she didn't want them to be part of or see a horror film. Which is ironic because Jamie Lee Curtis just not long after this movie went on to play in Halloween.
6 years. It was 6 years.
Okay,
1978.
Okay, so 6 years later, went on to be one of the most famous scream queens in history in Halloween. So yeah, it's just such
Do you think John Carpenter saw her in this movie?
Maybe. I actually do know. There is a fact I do know about Halloween and the casting of Jamie Lee Curtis, but I'm not going to share it here because this is not a Halloween or horror movie podcast. This is a giant monster movie podcast. And why? You mentioned it. Why are the rabbits carnivorous all of a sudden? It just makes no sense. All they did was get big. Why did they suddenly start trying to eat people?
It makes no sense. And here's the thing. This is as good a time as any to talk about this. Because this is actually an adaptation. It is a book adaptation.
Yes.
This is actually based on an Australian science fiction novel, and I am actually curious to read this novel. Unfortunately, I don't think it's been reprinted since 1964, and now costs $800 plus a pound of flesh on Amazon. But the name of the novel that it was based on is called The Year of the Angry Rabbit. and was by a fella named Russell Braddon. I had to look up a summary of this on Wikipedia, and I will tell you right now, I wish they had made this movie. Because I think if they had adapted the novel accurately, you may have had a cult classic on your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Because unlike this movie, because one of the biggest problems that this movie has that makes it unintentionally hilarious is that it is deathly serious. It has an absolutely absurd concept, and everything is as straight-laced as you can possibly get. And the novel was comic horror. It was satirical. And I want this movie. When I read the summary, I'm thinking, like, you could have given this to somebody like Sam Raimi, and he would have had a ball with it.
Oh, yeah.
But here is my little summary of the novel that from what I read online. You have the Australian Prime Minister who uses a new super weapon because it takes place in Australia, not Arizona, to kill giant rabbits and then try to use this weapon to dominate the world. That's the TV guide summary for you. Here's some more details. So here he goes. Here's the summary, proper summary. The Prime Minister learns that his property has been infested with a rabbit epidemic, which is timely because I found out that is actually a problem in Australia.
Oh, yeah,
I'll give you a few details of that in a little bit because that's what I do on my podcast. I research things and put stuff in context. So his solution for dealing with this rabbit epidemic a bioweapon. A bioweapon that is called Super Mix, MYX, that was genetically engineered super strain of a disease that afflicts rabbits. That is called, and I may be butchering this name, but it's called myxomatosis. Okay, so they just call it Super Mix. But instead of killing the rabbits, it turns them into rabid rabbits and is fatal to humans. Oops. So the Prime Minister has his property nuked to kill the rabbits, which is interesting because last I checked, Australia was the nuclear club. They don't have a nuclear arsenal. So as you can tell, this novel is very much a satire of war and capitalism and nationalism. And then they plant the Super Mix bombs around the world. And then detonate them. And then it pretty much turns the world into a more benign version of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Where wars are non-existent and conflicts are resolved in harmless arena game.
Yeah. Which Mad Max is another Australian-based thing, so makes sense.
And this predates actually Mad Max. And this movie predates Mad Max.
Right.
But the true irony of this novel is after all of this, and it happens over the course of 3 years, and the Australian Prime Minister now rules the world, the killer rabbits come back, and they have now been mutated to giant size through the radiation. And also, as I already mentioned, they became rabid because of the disease, and now they're giants because of radiation. And they kill everybody.
Right. Yep.
And then everybody abandons Australia and leaves it to the Aborigines, and they summon a flood to kill the rabbits. And then it's implied that all of the Super Mix bombs that are still left in the world are going to destroy all the rest of the humans. Also, just to point out that this is a satire, the novel is named Major Gary Cooper Hill. I want this movie.
Look, now I have gone on
this
record.
This could be a very like Dr. Strangelove sort of movie. And
oh yeah,
amazing.
Oh yeah. Now I have gone on record multiple times on this podcast as saying that because Little Shop of Horrors has opened the door for cheesy, dumb monster movies to be turned into plays, musicals. I want that to happen with Night of the Lepus. And I actually kind of want the play to be based off of the novel and turn this into a full-fledged musical. It would be perfect.
Yes, actually, now I want that. I had a joke that I was going to bring up where I think I got one better for you, but that it may top it. But I will still bring this up to try to make your day, Travis. In fact, I might make your week. This was something that came to mind as I was watching this movie. You know, the one thing I might want more than that would be Tremors 8 Graboids versus.
Yeah, they're kind of set in the same area.
Yes, in Nevada. Oh no, it's in Arizona. And,
right.
Perfection is in Nevada. Let's do a crossover. Sick the graboids on the giant man-eating rabbits. I will watch it.
I would watch it.
It would be the first Tremors sequel I've seen since 3.
I would watch the heck out of that.
And then I don't know, make it a musical too. We'll make it a musical that's a crossover with Night of the Lepus. Because why not? Just pile on the ridiculousness. Do it now.
Oh man. So one of these days
back on your show for that.
One of these days, I'm going to be doing a dream casting of what I think the Night of the Lepus musical, who should be in it, because I keep talking about it, and I feel like maybe a bonus episode needs to be my dream casting for Night of the Lepus the musical.
And then to have a bonus episode, Tremors 8 Graboids versus.
Right. Okay.
Oh my
gosh. We have had a lot of fun with this movie. Do you want to go through and just run off as many pop culture rabbit references that you want to make? Let's just get them all out right now, right here.
Get them. I still have notes on the actual rabbit epidemic in Australia, but I do way too.
Okay, yeah.
But I mean, we don't have to go into.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it is an interesting thing, and it makes sense that this movie was, or not the movie, but the book was set in Australia because the rabbit epidemic in Australia was really bad, and still is to a certain extent. Like they still are constantly fighting rabbit overpopulation.
Yeah. And coming up with diseases to infect them with, to kill them, and doing hunts, and which we saw. That was the one acknowledgement of the novel.
Yes,
because this is really only inspired by the novel, but it starts with a newscaster who's talking about the rabbit epidemic in Australia and showing, I'm guessing it's actual stock footage.
Right.
Of people hunting rabbits and the rabbits just running into fences.
I wish this movie had been set in Australia instead of in America, because I would have loved to have seen a giant rabbit destroy the Sydney Opera House.
And then we can have Crocodile Dundee and Mad Max buy a giant rabbit. Yeah, hey, rabbit, you see this knife?
That's not a knife.
Oh, your bucktooth, that's not a knife. This is a knife. But no. Rabbits, specifically, they were European rabbits. They were introduced by the First Fleet in Australia, 1788, and are considered an invasive species. They just ran amok.
Right. And with no natural predators, they just took over. Yeah.
Now, apparently, from what I was reading, they kept the population under control for the most part until about the middle of the 19th century. And then a fella by the name of Thomas Austin decided in the late 1850s to start releasing wild rabbits so he could hunt them.
Right.
And there's this little line here from him where he said, the introduction of a few rabbits could do little harm and might provide a touch of home in addition to a spot of hunting, because he was a British fellow.
Mm-hmm.
And then, because there were no natural predators at that point, because those populations had thinned out, the population blew up to about 10 billion.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But one nice thing that kind of came out of it was there's been a couple of economic depressions in Australia since then.
Mm-hmm.
Most notably, in the 1930s, along with most of the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So people would capture the rabbits and use them as food sources or as a source of income.
Yeah.
But so some nice things did come out of it. But regardless, it's been devastating for Australia's ecology. It's caused because of overgrazing, and they've caused soil erosion.
Right. Yeah. So I would definitely love to. I need to reach out to Sam, who has been a guest on our podcast twice now, and talk to him because we talk about him being an ecologist on the podcast, but he specializes actually in invasive species, and he is from Australia. So I'd like to hear some of his thoughts on. He's from Melbourne, Australia. And I'd like to hear some of his thoughts on this. But the Australia, pretty much everything that's not a marsupial or a bird that's naturally there is an invasive species or has been brought over there, because dingoes were not originally from Australia. They were descendants of dogs that were brought to Australia. The rabbits were brought to Australia. Cats and deer and a lot of those things. And one invasive species that a lot of people don't know about in Australia is camels.
Camels?
Camels. Australia has the largest population of camels outside of Africa.
What?
So, and it's because they were brought over as a way of transporting goods back before cars were around. They do well in the desert, so they would do well in the outback areas of central Australia. And what happened is their population just boomed and people started letting them loose. And now there are herds of camels that just run wild in Australia.
Wow.
So that is
mind blown.
That is an interesting thing. So yeah, but going back to rabbits, going back to our rabbits.
Oh my god, the goodness!
In the final scene, when all the rabbits are dying from electric shock, it's how they get rid of them. All I could hear in my head was "Kill the rabbit, kill the rabbit,
kill the rabbit," and no one stops to think, "Hey, it's the fault of these kids, these anti-Kennys, because the little girl had to have one of the genetically altered rabbits, and then this boy, wasn't her brother or anything, it was just this boy. It's like, I don't like you or your rabbit. He killed my chickens. Get rid of the rabbit. I'll get my revenge by setting him free." And so it's like, you kids are to blame. It's all because of you. All your fault. But nobody talks about that.
Oh, I got a good one. Silly rabbits. Meddling in God's domain is for kids.
And at the end, those poor bunnies got energized.
Yep. Oh, tick, tick, tick. Bingo. Oh, man.
I'm going to play my killer bunny card. Somebody keep Hugh Hefner away from these things. The bunny. Whoa, I ate the bunny. All you Christian kids will understand that one.
Oh my goodness.
All these poor things are looking for Jessica.
Just looking for Jessica. Oh.
This is Donnie Darko's fever dream.
Oh goodness.
Which, by the way, speaking of white rabbits, we discovered because of a joke in the riff track. If you have seen The Matrix, you have seen part of this movie.
Yes,
because when Neo goes to visit the Oracle, there's a couple of kids practicing their psychic powers. There's a TV on in the background, and it's playing a clip from Night of the Lepus, because symbolism.
Symbolism with the rabbits. No, I have a feeling that just someone on set, one of the Wachowskis, is just a huge fan of this movie, and that's why it's there. It has nothing to do with the whole rabbit themes in
Or the rabbit hole. Tumbling down the rabbit hole.
Right, like it has nothing to do with the whole rabbit imagery in the movie. It's just because we were fans of it and we were playing it in the background. So yes, Night of the Lepus makes an appearance in The Matrix.
Yep. I don't know if we made this reference or not, but it's obvious we have to do it. No, none of these rabbits are bringing children baskets of goodies. Not happening.
Oh man. So
I said, and I don't think any of them are made of velvet.
None of them are made of velveteen.
And none of them are nearly as worried as the one that hangs out with Pooh.
Oh man, we need one.
Go
ahead.
And then this will be my last one.
Okay, finish on this one.
We could at least finish on this one for all of you Rift Tracks fans out there. Mankind's greatest achievement.
Oh man. So there you go, everybody. There's all of our rabbit pop culture references that we could squeeze into this episode.
I could do more, man.
Yeah. Well, we'll save it.
Yeah, here's a good one for you.
Okay.
An alternate title for this should have been Death by Snuggles. That's essentially what rabbits do to people.
Yeah, Death by Snuggles. They're so cute. Every time the rabbits are shown like snarling and growling, it's actually them yawning. They're yawning, and it's so cute.
How do you? I get what they were trying to. do. They're trying to take something cute and innocuous and innocent and make it horrifying.
Right.
On paper, that makes sense, and there are examples that you can point to where that's been done. It's just this movie.
Right.
This movie, man.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into our Godzuki scores. For anybody who is new to the podcast, we like to score our movies out of 5 Godzukis. Godzuki being Godzilla's dim-witted nephew from the 1970s Hanna-Barbera cartoon, and we like to embrace the silly and pay homage to the great Godzuki by using him as our yardstick for these movies. So, Nathan, out of 5 Godzukis, what would you score Night of the Lepus?
Oh, it's all the pressure. Score. I mean, I hang out with Godzuki on a daily basis, but oh man, I feel like I need to give this 2.
Okay.
Yeah, you have I have to give it the real score.
Right.
And then the glorious train wreck score.
Yeah.
The ironic score.
Right.
Because if I graded it on pure enjoyment, especially with riff tracks, this is a 5.
Oh yeah.
Because of how ridiculous it is. But as an actual movie, I was being critical about it. I don't think it rises above a 2. I can't, good conscience, give it anything higher than a 2. That is the absolute peak I could give it, as if I was looking at it as a movie.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I'm right there with you. My score for this would be a 2, but just like with the Giant Claw review, I would say me as a critic, as someone who's supposed to be presenting these movies to people who may not have seen them and trying to give an honest review, it's definitely a 2. But drunk Travis, who is drunk while watching this movie, would definitely give it a 5 because I loved watching this movie. It was so much fun. So do you have
the bunny costumes in the ship?
Yeah. So do you have any final thoughts that you want to say about Night of the Lepus before we finally close the book on this movie?
If you want a really good laugh, if you want to see, if you're into unintentional comedies If you love riff tracks, MST3K, and the sorts of movies that they have on there, you need to give this a watch. You will have a good time. Especially, even if you don't watch it with the riff track like we did, get a bunch of your friends together, your funniest friends, order a pizza, get your favorite adult beverage if you want, and give this a watch. You will be highly entertained, and you will laugh the whole time, because this is the perfect riff tracks MST3K sort of movie. It's a bad movie, but it's a sincere bad movie.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it great.
Oh
it's very paradoxical.
Yeah, my final thoughts.
It's great because it's terrible.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My final thoughts on this, the people behind this movie set out to create a terrifying horror movie that people would be afraid in and be screaming in, and they failed so brilliantly. So brilliantly. This movie is artistically bad. And that is the only way I can describe it, is it is artistically bad. So just like Nathan, if you enjoy the irony of watching terrible movies and making fun of them and having fun with them, you will enjoy this movie. But if you are someone who takes movies very seriously, don't watch this movie.
No, don't. This is the other way I describe movies like this. I call them awesomely awful.
Yeah. Yep.
That is what this is. It is awesomely awful.
Yep, exactly. So we're going to close the book now, at least for now, on Night of the Lepus. Does that mean I will never bring the movie up ever again on the podcast? Probably not, much to Michael's chagrin.
I feel like every podcast needs to come up with a bingo board for the sorts of things that get referenced on a particular episode, and Night of the Lepus needs to be added to Kaiju Weeklies.
Yes, exactly. Oh, wow. All right, so we're going to quickly hop over into the mailbag.
Hop!
That was unintentional.
They just keep coming.
Oh man. So we're going to go ahead and get into the mailbag segment. So last week I asked a question from Nick Blackler, who sent us a bunch of questions on Facebook. I only answered one of his questions last week, so I decided to cover another one of his questions this week on this episode. And his question is, could you give some suggestions for some non-Godzilla or Gamera kaiju or monster movies that you haven't mentioned on the podcast? Bonus points if they are on Tubi. So
I just joined Tubi, so I don't know their full library yet.
Yeah, well, I went through, when I got this question, I went through and looked at Tubi and looked at what they had available. And so I'm going to read off a few. Now, we've mentioned a lot of Giant Monster podcasts. We haven't reviewed a lot, but we've mentioned a lot on here. So finding one that we haven't mentioned was kind of hard. But I will give a shout out to 20 Million Miles to Earth. We've talked about that's a Ray Harryhausen film. It is available on Tubi. The Ray Harryhausen effects is what makes that movie great. So I would definitely watch that one if you are a fan of the stop motion kind of monster movies. There is a movie called Altitude, which was a 2010 horror movie about a giant monster, tentacle monster in the sky attacking a small airplane. And it's kind of interesting. It is an interesting movie. I will leave it at that.
That one I have not seen yet.
I won't go as far to say it's a good movie, but it is definitely worth watching and giving some attention to. The original Little Shop of Horrors from the 1960s.
Which I do want to see. I have only seen the musical, and I've actually seen the stage version as well. I had that privilege.
Oh wow! But yeah, the original Little Shop of Horrors is on Tubi. There is a movie called, where is it? Leviathan, which stars what's his name? Peter Weller from RoboCop.
Mm-hmm.
And he fights a giant underwater monster. So there's a giant monster movie for you. They also have Reptilicus on there, which is a fun one. So if you want to watch an old-timey one, they have a few of the schlocky ones. Like they have Reptilicus, they have the giant claw. So they have a few like that on there too.
Yeah, I'm looking over my queue right now to see if I added anything that could be added to your list. They also, you haven't mentioned this one, they also have Gorgo.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, well, yeah, we've reviewed that one on the podcast, but yeah. Gorgo.
Okay.
Gorgo is on there. Both the original version and the Mystery Science Theater version of Gorgo is available on there, and Gorgo is legitimately one of my favorite giant monster movies.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but is Angry Red Planet a giant?
Yes, Angry Red Planet is a giant monster movie. Well, it has giant monsters in it, so I guess it counts.
Yeah, it's close enough. I mean, you establish definition.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There's I mentioned it, but Riff Tracks and Mystery Science Theater 3000 has a lot of stuff on Tubi, so that's always, you can always find one of those to watch. But yeah, like the Mystery Science Theater 3000 Attack of the Giant Leeches is on here. So if you not subscribe, because Tubi is a free service, and
you'll have to make an account.
Well, actually, you don't even need to make an account. You can,
really, because when it made me make it.
Oh, well, see, I always hit because it always says skip this step on it for me. And so I always skip the step, so you don't have to make an account, and you can watch it. But the only thing is, there are ads in it. But it's a free service that just has ads. But you know, if you want to watch some of those, and a big reason why a lot of these giant monster movies are on Tubi is because Shout Factory has partnered with Tubi, and so all of the Gamera films are on there. A lot of the Super Sentai is on there, and a lot of the, you know, all the Mystery Science Theater 3000 stuff is on there, and so it's a great place to find some monster movies. It's a great place to find a lot of things, but you know, for this podcast, we focus on the monsters.
You can also, and I don't know how they, but you can also find at least one, maybe there's more, I'm not sure. There's some obscure Toho movies on there as well, like Virus with Sonny Chiba is on there. Yeah. And that is incredibly, it's been released on home media in the United States, but it's really hard to find. So the fact that you can actually stream it on this thing is mildly astounding.
Yeah. Tubi adds actually a lot of fun. It is a great place to find a lot of just old timey movies that are really good, and it has a lot of modern stuff on it too. It has TV shows, it has all kinds of stuff, but if you're into monster movies, you can really find some great stuff on there. And so, Nick, we hope that we were able to list out some of those movies for you. And just while we're in the mailbag segment, I want to make sure everyone knows, if you have a question, comment, or anything that you want to send us, you can do that kaijuweekly@gmail.com, or you can tweet at us at Kaiju Weekly on Twitter. That is the way to reach out to us. And you can also reach out to us through the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group, because we're always on there. Me and Michael are on there. Michael is the moderator for that Facebook group. So if you're on there, that is how you can reach out to us as well. Also wanted to remind everyone that we are doing 2 different giveaways right now. We are giving away a Mothra Blu-ray Steelbook edition to anyone who wants to follow us on social media, on Twitter specifically, if you want to follow us on Twitter, and you leave us a review on iTunes. That is all you have to do to enter that giveaway. And you can be entered in to win the Mothra Steelbook from Mill Creek. Mill Creek is the one who released that. And yeah, if you want to do that, that would be good. And the cutoff date for that is May 6th. So have it done by May 6th, and we will pick someone as the winner. And also, we are giving away free t-shirts to anyone who signs up to our Patreon by May 6th. If you are a Patreon member right now, you get a free t-shirt. If you sign up anytime between now and May 6th, you will also get a free t-shirt as a way of saying thank you for supporting the podcast during this very weird and difficult time right now. So if you're able to support us financially, we want to thank you by sending you a t-shirt, and the cutoff date for that is also May 6th. And so I think that's it for this week's episode. So I want to say a big thank you to Nathan for coming all the way from Monster Island and joining me on this episode. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was. It was totally worth it. And I can't begin to tell you, I miss good old America. You know, it's nice to visit, you know, after you grow up here most of your life and then get that crazy new job over. So I take every opportunity I can to go back. Unfortunately, I may have to, you know, being under some scrutinous quarantine for 2 weeks or something once I get back to Ogasawara, because that's how Japan is handling things.
Right.
If you've traveled to the United States and you go back, they put you, I think the board's trying to find some loopholes to avoid that. But you know, the board at Monster Island just confuses me. I have given up trying to figure them out.
At least it's not the disco nurses from or nuns from space.
Yeah, the disco space nuns.
Yeah, disco space nuns.
Space nuns. Yeah,
so for anyone who hasn't listened or isn't familiar with your podcast and who you are, do you want to give some plugs?
Of course I do. My middle name is Shameless Self-Promotion. As I mentioned before, I am Nathan Vault Podcast, a podcast that seeks entertainment and enlightenment through tokusatsu. We're a film appreciation podcast. We're not really a review show. I have a rotating roster of guest hosts who join me to talk about kaiju and tokusatsu films. And not only do you get to hear us talk about the movies, but you get to have a little bit of a history and culture lesson, because I put them in their context. Because as you have often quoted from me from my first episode here, a lot of these movies are not made for us as modern day Americans. They are classic films or they are foreign films, and oftentimes they are both. So in order to fully appreciate these movies, or more fully appreciate these movies, you have to understand the context in which they were made. So you get to hear about all of that. And I have had people tell me they have learned so much listening to the show. They have learned things they didn't know before, and they see a lot of these in different lights. So that's what you have to look for. And we have a really fun time. I get to put up with my producer, Jimmy from NASA, who has miraculously survived the infamous war in space, but he won't tell me how. He riffs on me and interrupts me while I'm trying to do the show. Part of his job description, he has to correct me on the air, or he does it in his blogs. We have a little bit of an R2D2C3 relationship sometimes, but you know, we still have a good time on the show. I am also, you may not know this, I am also a writer, so you can check out my work there. My author website is nathanjsmarchand.com. That will give you links to all of my author's social medias and all of that. And if you want to check out the podcast, it's monsterislandfilmvault.com, which will also give you links to all of our social media.
Yeah, and I will also be putting the link to your podcast in the description of this episode so that people can go and check it out.
Thank you, sir.
And so want to also thank everyone who was listening, who has put up with us listening to this episode of the podcast, because my goodness, it was a weird one. We are not the same men we were when we started.
Changes, man.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to follow the podcast on social media, we are at Kaiju Weekly on Twitter and at Kaiju Weekly Pod on Instagram. You can send questions, comments, or answers to our trivia question to our email, kaijuweekly@gmail.com. You can also find us at the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group. Also follow at Kaiju Groupie 54 and the Kaiju Groupie on Twitter and Instagram. That is Michael, my co-host. And we also want to say a big thank you to Brian, Sheeger, and Thorax for supporting us on Patreon. You can also support the podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/Kaiju Weekly Pod, but only if you're able to, because we know that now is a very difficult financial time for a lot of people. So don't feel pressured to do it.
Yes.
And so the only other thing I have to do to close out this episode is to ask the trivia question for next week's episode. So this is going to hint to our next episode that we're going to be covering, me and Michael. Michael will be back from his vacation to Monster Island. So that question is, Haruo Nakajima was best known for playing Japanese monsters like Godzilla and Baragon. But in what? Right, of course.
Hashtag justice for Baragon.
Hashtag justice for Baragon. So he was best known for playing Japanese monsters like Godzilla and Baragon. But in what movie did he play a famous American monster?
I'm biting my tongue because I know.
So that is the topic of next week's episode. And if you answer any answer at all, whether it be a funny answer, whether it be the correct answer or a wrong answer, we will give you a shout out on the podcast. And so I'm going to close out this episode of Kaiju Weekly by saying, help control the giant rabbit population, make Jack more like Jill, and Jill a little more like Jack. We'll see you guys next week. Hello?
Hey Travis, Michael here. Sorry to interrupt you guys, but can you put Nathan on, please?
Hey, Michael, what's up? Did you make it safely to the island?
Hey Nathan, Michael here. I'm afraid I'm a little bit lost. According to the directions that was sent to me by your producer Jimmy, once I was dropped off on the west end of the island, I would see the Ishiro Honda Memorial Park. And from there, I'm to follow the signs to the visitor center. I've tried getting up with Jimmy because I was just dropped off on the west end, and I don't see any of those. I don't see the park, and I don't see any signage leading me to the visitor center, so I'm hoping you can help me.
Wait, the West End? No, Michael, you have to go back.
Nathan? Nathan, are you there? Nathan, Travis, can you hear me? Oh, God, the signal here sucks, guys. Nathan, can you hear me? Oh, crap, guys. Oh, I gotta go. I'm sorry, I gotta go.